To win in life, to be fun to be with, you must recognize that it isn't failure to say I'm wrong. It's not failure to say I need help, or I can't make it by myself, or I hurt. You don't have to fear past, present, or future failure. To fail is not fatal. Failure at failure is fatal.
Hello again, everybody. This is Heartbeat, the podcast, featuring insight and teaching from the more than 50 years of work done by Landon Saunders. In the early years of Heartbeat, Landon would sit down once a month and record an audio message for friends of Heartbeat. On today's episode, we drop back in on one of those messages where Landon is visiting with us about how we deal with personal failure. Once again, here's Landon.
We deal with failure as if we're going to outgrow it. Now, come on, forget that. Will you ever get rid of failure? Really? Has anyone else ever succeeded in that quest? Of course you cannot get rid of failure. You do not have that option. You have never had the option not to fail. You won't get over failure like you did the measles, and you won't outgrow it as you did your baby teeth. Why is it important to realize this? Well, as long as you think you can get rid of failure, you'll never find the proper way to deal with it effectively. You'll forget all the times that you've already won over failure, and do you know, you have won a lot of rounds. But you'll miss all of those joyous victories and remain miserable because of your continuing awareness of failure in your life. Now, with such an approach, nobody's going to be fun to be with. Either you're going to find a way to deal with failure, or you will always lose. You cannot win away from the company of failure. There is no such ground on which to fight. Face the nature of failure, and you can get in a position to have a lot of fun winning. You'll even learn to use your failures to help you accomplish your victories. And so what's a healthy view of failure? Well, first, failure's a warning signal. It's like the oil light on your car that's flashing red. Failure warns you that something's wrong in your life. It warns you that something in your life will always need your attention. And second, failure isn't what keeps you from being fulfilled. Do you believe that by eliminating failure, you automatically will find fulfillment? It's faulty thinking. The opposite is probably more nearly true. To constantly seek the elimination of failure is to live with defeat and emptiness. To win in life, to be fun to be with, you must recognize that it isn't failure to say I'm wrong. It's not failure to say I need help, or I can't make it by myself, or I hurt. You don't have to fear past, present, or future failure. To fail is not fatal. Failure at failure is fatal. You don't want to get an F in failure. You want to get an A in that course. You come home and show everybody your report card. You come down to failure, you got an F. Listen, if you get an A in anything in life, it needs to be in failure. Failure won't keep you from living. The fear of failure will. Now, what I would advise you to do is back your tape up right now and go through this one again. It was hard for me to get through it without tungling up my tang. And so I imagine it was fairly difficult for you to hear it as you went through it. So back your tape up and go through it again if you need to, because it's important. The problem of life, then, isn't failure. It's the way we deal with failure. Have you ever had a cat come in, slump down over in a corner somewhere, look up and say, I'm just a failure. I've been out trying to catch mice today, didn't have a good day, I'm just a failure. Don't think I'll ever go out there again. I'm depressed. Or the lowly tick. You know, a tick has three senses, light, temperature, and feeling. But that's enough to get him out on the limb, and it's enough to tell him when a warm-blooded animal is passing beneath, and it's enough to let him know just the precise moment at which to roll over off the limb and onto the back of the warm-blooded animal in time for lunch. But can you imagine a tick getting about halfway out on the limb and coming to a screeching halt, falling down and saying, Oh me, fell off the limb, missed again. I wonder who I am. Is my life worthwhile? Am I really doing what a tick should do anyhow? Only human beings seem to do these things. As Kurt Vonnegut said, tiger gotta hunt, bird gotta fly, man gotta sit and wonder, why? We sit and moan and we wonder why we can't make everything work out right. We don't seem to understand that the challenge of life is to win in spite of inevitable failure. This is what it means to be human. Everything is not all right in your life. Everything is not all right in the world, and it never will be. And when you finally accept that everything is not all right, that everything is not going to be all right, that it's futile to spend your life moaning about it, and that all of that is all right, then you're ready for a great surprise. And the great surprise is that you can embrace the joy that thrives in the midst of tragedy and failure. Education, religion, psychology, and self-help. None of these will ever seem to work right if the goal is to make everything all right. The goal is to find the joy that doesn't depend on the absence of failure, defeat, and tragedy. True joy continues to give meaning to your life in all of these. Condemnation of the way things are or sugarcoating over the way things are, neither is helpful. We must develop a taste for life as it is. We must learn to see its terrible beauty. And we must know that it was created for our sake. This will be good news. Do you know it doesn't matter what has or hasn't happened in your life? There's only one thing that matters, and that's you. There's a secret for surviving what happens and what doesn't happen. There's a secret for surviving successes and failures, disappointment, and even excitement. Let me tell you what the secret is. It is in two parts. The first part of the secret is acceptance. You begin by accepting all that has happened and all that hasn't happened. But even when we accept everything that has or hasn't happened in our lives, we still won't feel fulfilled. And this is where the second part of the secret comes in. Fill the rest of your life with joy. Fill the gaps with joy. Fill the places that feel as if they may crack you apart someday. Fill them with joy. Joy is the mortar that lets you use all the raw material of your life in the building of your life. With joy, even the forces that would normally tear you down are used to build you up. The secret of acceptance plus joy is you waste nothing of your life. Acceptance plus joy, that's the secret. And doesn't it make sense? What if we try to fill our lives with something besides joy? Is it possible? Don't we feel bad about ourselves, dissatisfied and desperate, because we try to top off our existence with everything but joy? Don't we destroy relationships because of gaps we feel inside, gaps we try to fill with other people instead of joy? And how do we deal with failure? Don't we spend our time fighting failure rather than finding joy? You know, sometimes a human life can be reduced to just a heap of ashes. And yet from somewhere within comes the cry, I'm still here.
Landon will be back in just a moment. But first, we want to encourage you to visit our website, thisisheartbeat.com. You'll find additional information about Landon's work and resources that are also available. That's thisisheartbeat.com. Now, let's get back to Landon.
Joy doesn't wait until there's no more possibility for tragedy. It finds its way through any tragedy. And one of the reasons is those who have real joy know about the illusions of their world, and they don't put their trust in them anymore. Now, to clear the air, let's tick off the inevitables of life. It's okay to do that because they're true, and they'll remain true whether we think about them or not. And so I'm going to give you a list of the inevitables. No, they're not really good news, but they're just true. And so hang on. Here's the first one. The rhythms of nature continue unchanged through all generations. What has been and is what will be, and I can't change it. Now, if you know this, you can then learn what you can change, and you can organize your life around that. The next one. Good people often get it in the neck, while bad people prosper. Now, if you know this, then you will know how to go forward in your life, even with all the injustice in the world. And the next, relationships don't work very well. And if you know that, and if you believe that they're valuable, then you will give them the proper attention and nurture. You care for what you believe has value. The next, Religion doesn't work very well. It's always tempted to remake itself into the image of the age. True religion must be personal and joyful. Politics, it has its limitations, so don't be unrealistic in your expectations of political solutions. Still another, things are not usually what they appear to be. Diligence and thrift are often masks for greed. I'm doing it all for my family's sake is a vastly overrated statement. The next, wealth cannot nourish the heart. The next, fame is an illusion because men and women are usually forgotten. And the last, we all will die. Now, all of these, as hard as they sound, have a counterpoint, but it's a surprise to most of us. The counterpoint to everything I've just said in the list I just gave you is joy. Joy can face reality as it is without becoming cynical. Someone has said there are two great heresies in the world, the belief that you can do nothing and the belief that you can do everything. Well, insecurity is one of life's greatest enemies, and it causes most of the illusions we live by. We keep adding layer upon layer of goods and experiences and accomplishments, somehow believing that if we can only get enough layers down, that we'll be secure. But is it true? Again, Tolstoy tells the story of a man who was chased by a pack of wolves. He ran and ran, but they were getting nearer and nearer. He finally stumbled into an old abandoned well, and he grabbed a small tree growing out of the inside wall of the well, and he lowered himself into it just beyond the reach of the wolves, and he thought he was safe. Until he looked down to the bottom of the well, and there, teeth bared, saliva dripping, was a dragon, just waiting. He looked over to where the little tree he was holding on to grew out of the well's wall, and to his horror, a black rat and a white rat were gnawing on the small trunk. And so there he dangled, wolves above, a dragon below, and rats gnawing away at his only support. That's a predicament. But as he looked around, something caught his attention. On the leaves of his little tree were a few drops of golden honey, and so he leans over and begins licking those drops of honey. Obviously, we can interpret a story like that in a lot of ways, but I'm struck by this thought. We really don't have much protection against problems and death. There's no use pretending we do. But even though that's true, it doesn't mean life has to be bitter. No, there's a way to taste the sweetness of life, even though we face its realities without blinking. If we're to find true joy, we must somehow learn to make our insecurity holy, to make it tasteful. And this wouldn't mean much to me, frankly, if I didn't have great respect for the reality of the inner life of human beings. And don't you be discouraged if you find yourself a little puzzled, because part of the fun of living is the mystery that surrounds it. And you have enough time, really, to work through all of this.
And that's where we'll pick up with our next episode. Be sure and join us. This podcast is produced and made possible by Friends of Heartbeat, who invite you to visit the website thisisheartbeat.com, where you'll find additional information about Landon's work and other materials that are available at no cost. If you enjoyed today's material, we invite you to rate, follow, and review the podcast wherever you get your material. It helps as others begin to seek the same kind of information. And of course, we hope to see you again next time on This is Heartbeat, the podcast.